This video is brought to you by Harold Sack, who gave me a massive 1 year's worth of subscriptions on Patreon. Eutropia the Twice Favoured versus Danitha, Flubs, and Disa. We've got two lands here, but yeah, I suppose I've just seen the Mystic Remora, so we could try and refill our hand with that, or get more lands in, I mean, so yeah, let's try keeping this. We're third in the turn order, so we might miss out on some draws with Mystic Remora, but we can keep it around for a couple of turns. Wild Growth on turn 1, so a shame the Mystic Remora didn't see that. And it's a shame that I saw that it's a white border. Alright, draw into an Overgrowth, so we're getting into all of our 3-drops, which is where I think the deck peaks. Let's make this a Tropical Island just to fix the colours. Doc Urlock from the Teamer player. And a Blanchwood Prowler, so just seeing creatures into our Mystic Remora, unfortunately. So this means that we have to pay the cumulative upkeep if we want to keep the Remora around, which I think we will for at least one turn. And then draw into a Wild Growth, so unfortunate that the Khan's Bastion is colourless, otherwise we could accelerate our mana a little bit here. But we can most likely do that next turn, just hoping to at least draw into a land off this. And thanks to the filter land here, they've got Shadowblood Ridge, which can make Rakdos mana from colourless, so able to throw out a Fairy Dream Thief, and keeps whatever card they saw on top. Another creature being played into the Remora, Flubs the Fool, and then it is Riveter's Overlook. Is sacrificed as soon as it enters and triggers the commander, so they're going to have to discard down to 4 cards here. And discards a Roiling Regrowth, and yet another creature, a Harnessed Snubhorn. And we get hit for 1. So I think we're just going to give up on this Mystic Remora then. And I'm sure as soon as we do, we're going to start seeing non-creature spells cast into it, but hoping we draw into a land during the draw phase. If we do, or if we get into a green land at least, we can get both of our land auras down. And there we go. It is a green land, but it's a tap land, unfortunately. We're not having the best of luck here, are we? And there is an Ivy Gleeful Spell Thief. I think, without too much of an abundance of auras, I think we just have to get rid of that one. So we'll go Wild Growth onto the Hedge Maze. Going pretty slow for the Jund player as well though, just throwing out a tap land here, so not able to crack his Myriad Landscape. Seems as though we're going to go down to Flubs in no time flat. A land played into the commander again, discarding a code Dharma's Reach, and now we see Garapor Orrery. Each player may play an additional land. Well, we're going to need to draw into them. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, if they have no cards in hand, they draw 3. Which is obviously going to be relevant for Flubs, with only 1 card in hand at the moment. Has thrown a Planar Genesis in the bin as well. Bear Umbra going on to the Harnessed Snubhorn, and does have a Soul Tithe in the bin, so could reanimate that. Goes into the left with the 1/1, and again comes in to hit us with a 4/7. Untaps all their lands due to the Bear Umbra. Does bring the Aura back into play. And throws it onto the Orrery, so it's likely that this is going down next turn unless he wants to pay the 4 mana to keep it around. Then we see Danitha enter play, 3 cards in hand for our opponent, but decides to leave it at that. Alright, now we're drawing into the untapped land, so what does that mean? We can go Overgrowth onto here, and then we'll have 4 mana available. And I think in all honesty it's just a Kami of Whispered Hopes. We can always play Eutropia and an enchantment or 2 into it next turn. The Overgrowth is good because it has the single land tap for 3 mana because it makes 2 additional, as opposed to giving it the ability to just tap for 2. So 3 mana from 1 land equals a Kami of Whispered Hopes, and hopefully we can get some plus counters dotted around and make use of the Inspiring Call to draw some cards. Gonna want to see more creatures with plus counters on them though. An Ignoble Hierarch for the Disa. Again, playing a tap land, so yeah, I would think it would be more valuable to crack the Myriad Landscape there, personally. So with the Soul Tithe triggering, it's time to see if they do want to keep the Orrery in play or not. Obviously this ending up in the graveyard consistently means that it can constantly be re-equipped with the Danitha. So I'm hoping they do pay to keep it in play here, really. But of course they decide not to, so down it goes. Phial of Galadriel. And they will have to discard to their commander, and they will draw 2 cards instead if they draw a card while they have none in hand. Discard Omnath, Locus of Rage. Lion Sash, speaking of plus counters, can start getting rid of this player's graveyard, so that might be of some relevance. Equipping it onto the Danitha, going after our Ivy, Gleeful Spell Thief. I don't think we've even got a means of... Well, maybe we've got Balagad Recovery in the deck or something like that. Yeah, this opponent is really worried about us, being kind of focusing in on us all game. Goes after the Omnath Locus of Rage as well, so 3+ counters on this. It was permanents that he went after, including our Mystic Remora. So, the 4/7, predictably, comes in towards us. The 5/5 commander damage at least goes into the left though. So they untap all their lands with 2 cards in hand. He's ignoring Flubs, which is pretty dangerous. I'd be solely focusing on this guy personally. Anyway, Danitha gets the Soul Tithe back into play as we assumed. So decides to put it onto the Overgrowth. I suppose at that point we might as well just tap the land to keep it in play. Unless we want the extra mana this turn. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 mana. 5 with the Kami. So I think we're doing something for the greater good here. We will keep the Tithe in play. Draw into a Spider Umbra, so if we're careful with mana here, we'll be able to get our commander down along with a Shimmering Wings. And then we'll put the Spider Umbra onto Eutropia. That is an enchantment entering, of course, so we'll put a couple of counters onto the Kami. And then there's nothing else we can do apart from... I was tempted last turn with the open blue mana to put the Shimmering Wings onto Kami, and maybe I should have done it because we would have had more mana available here. But we'll have to show our opponents the trick that we've got now. Oh, it's equal to power, not plus counters. Alright, in that case, let's go for Rhystic Study maybe. Seeing as how we don't have a plus counter on Eutropia yet, we can't give it indestructible with the Inspiring Call. So I think we use this opportunity to put a plus counter on Eutropia now. Or actually 2 plus counters thanks to the Kami. Alright, yeah, that pans out alright. So we just need to hope that we can keep all our stuff in play here. Maybe even draw some cards along the way to the study. Yet another tap land for the Disa player. Alright, well, Disa the Restless means that we're drawing 1 card to Rhystic Study, so maybe our luck is starting to change here. Gets us into Wolfwillow Haven, so more means of ramp here. Just need to hope that we don't see any enchantment base removal. An Austere command or something like that. The 1/1 goes into the right, and Ignoble Hierarch triggers Exalted, so still only a 2/2 flyer. It's enough to trigger the Disa though. Whenever 1 or more creatures deals combat damage to a player, create a Tarmogoyf token, so straight into a 4/5. Our opponent played the Polluted Delta and then had to discard the Courtyard, so he's not having the best of luck here. Is this when a land enters? No, it's when you play a land, so they can't crack the Polluted Delta in order to trigger their commander again. So just drew into 2 lands off the top. They needed a spell there really. With the additional 5 mana from the untap, they're starting to exile stuff from graveyards again. Nomad Mythmaker, put an aura from your graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. They'll need haste on that to make use of it this turn though. The commander, Vigilance Trample Lifelink, is now a 9/9 thanks to the Sash. And with 2 cards in hand, go straight through to combat. I imagine they swing the commander in at us, yep. So the 4/7 goes in at Flubs, and they don't have any auras to make use of with the Harnessed Snubhorn, so float in a couple of white mana before they untap to the Snubhorn, or the aura attached to that anyway. And we'll just assume that all the graveyards are going to be dead here. There's only, 1 graveyard that is left with a card in it, the Roiling Regrowth. And we will allow the now 11 points of commander damage through. So it may well be that we just go down next turn if we can't do anything about this. We do have multiple means of dealing with permanents and commanders specifically, but obviously we need to draw into them. Alright, a Minimus Containment, and they are paying into the Rhystic Study, so we only got the 1 card from that, but better than nothing I suppose. At least we got a trigger with it. So instead of being tempted into cracking this and giving them back the aura, I think we'll just leave it in play. And once again, we're just tapping into the Overgrowth here, I think. Alright, an Offer You Can't Refuse, probably worth holding up. Let's see. Wolfwillow Haven can go on any land, so we might as well just play it here. Let's go at Command Tower, being enchanted by the Haven. Then if we put a couple more plus counters on the Kami, it means that we can tap it for more blue mana into the Shimmering Wings, although, we want to make sure to hold up mana for the Inspiring Call. maybe the offer you can't refuse as well. I suppose we can crack this if we're desperate for an offer. So we can only do the Kami thing a couple of times here because we're missing an additional plus counter. But let's go Shimmering Wings onto the Eutropia. Eutropia gets a couple of plus counters. Bounce the Shimmering Wings back to hand, and we want to keep it in our hand just so that we can abuse it every turn if we're able to. Now, unlike with this one, we don't have Vigilance on ours, unfortunately, so yeah, it has Flying and Reach, but I think we're just going to have to one-shot Danitha if we're going to do anything about her at all. Or him, can't really tell. Anyway, only a 9/9 compared to the 11/11, which I'm sure is going to get bigger over the course of the turn, so we'll have to leave it at that. The graveyard's being depleted, obviously makes the Tarmogoyfs less good as well, so only a 2/3 now. So Comrade the Grim, we'll look at creatures specifically, leaving the graveyard. I always forget all the intricacies of this, but it is creatures that it cares about seeing leave, which is relevant with the Danitha and Sash. The 1/1 flyer swings into the right again, just to make another Tarmogoyf, I imagine. Let's see if Flubs can do anything this turn with now 2 cards in hand from the file. Escape to the Wilds is a good way to get things going. Exile the top 5 cards, you can play an additional land. And they have to discard the 1 card that's in their hand. Discards to that a Containment Construct. And so Comrade the Grim sees a creature go into the bin. So we each get hit for 1. We're down to 18 already compared to everyone else being at a decent life total. Exiles off the top a couple of lands which I'm sure he'll make use of. Conspiracy Theorist, Tatyova and Explore. So yeah, problem is he's just lacking mana at the moment. No cards in hand to discard though, so he doesn't need to worry about that. Instead we'll draw 2 to the file, cracking the Polluted Delta to fix his colours, and then plays a land from hand. He's got an additional land to make this turn of course, so has to discard again. And discards a Flooded Strand, but he's able to play the Conspiracy Theorist. So we'll draw another 2 cards thanks to the file and having no cards in hand. Explore will have him discard and draw a card as well, so it kind of replaces itself. More importantly, has an additional land to make this turn after that. Discards another creature by the looks of it. That is a Goblin Anarchomancer, so pings us again with Sir Conrad and the Conspiracy Theorist. We'll allow him to exile it. Another land being played, the Forest from Exile, so only has Tatyova available to him now, which will have to be next turn if he does want to play it. Discards another creature, this time it is the Springheart Nantuko, so we're not having the best of luck against the Grim. Noteworthy he didn't exile the Goblin Anarchomancer previously to the Conspiracy Theorist. Does exile the Springheart Nantuko though. Hardcast the Springheart Nantuko from Exile, which does count as a spell being cast, so once again discards. And once again it's a creature, this time the Geode Ranger. Put Springheart Nantuko, he's bestowing that onto his commander though, so if he does make copies of it, it will enter, but he'll have to choose which one to keep. Obviously the commander is legendary. Lion Sash now going after graveyards again. So the commander now a 14/14. It might be that even with all the plus counters and indestructible on Eutropia, thanks to Trample being on there, we're not going to be able to stop the commander damage coming through. Plays and cracks a fetch land. Alright, an Eldrazi Conscription probably means that we're going down here anyway. Unless they want to swing that in elsewhere. They can always throw it on somewhere else anyway. Whatever, I think we just allow it and hope that it swings in elsewhere and they'll maybe swing Danitha in towards us to try and get rid of us. We've got some useless permanents to get rid of to the Annihilator too anyway. Yep, the 11/11 straight in towards us. Our opponent really worried about us all game. So untaps all the lands first. Let's go for Inspiring Call just in case it's of any relevance and before they've got any more mana held up. Yeah, still not much luck here really. One with Nature doesn't do much for us and a land. So now we're going to take a hit for 11 definitely. And then they could exile stuff to the Annihilator anyway, so I think we're just going down regardless here because we have to get rid of permanents. Plus when we get rid of the Rhystic Study and the land, they're going to be able to reanimate stuff with the Nomad. So we're just playing straight into their hand here really, thanks to not drawing into any of our spot removal. Alright, going through to damage. Doesn't look as though he's using the Sash. Maybe he's got enough damage here and I haven't worked it out properly. Oh yeah, has us down to -1 regardless. So the Snubhorn triggers, and now can reanimate some auras that we've been keeping hold of the whole game. Maybe that's why he was focusing on us towards the end game, because we're kind of switching off his tactics here by not cracking the auras. So now the Minimus Containment goes on to the Phial of Galadriel, and they've still got the Nomad Mythmaker held up, which I think they can do at instant speed for the Soul Tithe. Soul Tithe goes on to the Disa the Restless, so they just did that with the commander. Disa not willing to pay for that, so goes down to the Soul Tithe and ultimately playing into our opponent's plan, like I said. So Conrad the Grim triggers a couple of times on that though. The commander does hit the graveyard and then leaves into the command zone. The Tarmogoyfs are back up to 5/6s though, although I'm sure they can be debuffed by the Sash. This has done a hell of a lot of work this game. As has the Bear Umbra. Didn't manage to draw into any of our spot removal, annoyingly. Rhythm of the Wild to give things haste and keep them from being countered. So Flubs is drawing one card now, thanks to the Phial being out of action. Tatyova being played from exile this turn, but he's not going to have a land to play into it, unless he can do something with this Conspiracy Theorist, gets rid of a Faithless Looting, which might make the difference. Decides to exile the Faithless Looting. Plays the Faithless Looting, he's going to draw a couple of cards, but then just have to discard them straight away. Does potentially play into the Theorist though, like I said. And of course draws a card with no cards in hand with the Flubs. So now has 3 cards in hand. Discards a Case of the Locked Hothouse and a Deep Analysis. Deep Analysis can be flashed back. And has 1 card in hand like we said. But straight away the Lion Sash continuing to do stuff. The Locked Hothouse is going to be exiled. Deep Analysis does manage to get exiled underneath the Theorist though. So now plays a Verdant Catacombs into the Tatyova, which means if he plays and cracks that, he'll be able to draw 2. But does have the Flubs to consider as well. No cards in hand at the moment, so will draw to his commander. And landfall triggers on the Nantuko, so he could make a copy of his commander if he wanted to do that for some reason. In response to that, before we see if it's an insect or not, we see a Frantic Search being cast, so draw 2, discard 2 and untap 3 lands. So it might be that Flubs starts to go off here and punishes Danitha for not going in over there all game. And Ignite the Future has ended up in the bin along with a Fierce Guardianship. Only exiles the Ignite the Future. Does decide to make an insect and has 2 cards in hand now. Plays another fetch land which is relevant with the Tatyova. Decides to have Flubs resolve before drawing with the Tatyova. So he must be eager to discard whatever he is about to discard, which is another creature. The Phylath World Sculptor only cares about basics, which is noteworthy with this. Doesn't seem as though our opponent's gone for a really combo heavy Flubs deck though. It's just reasonably generic landfall. Makes another insect. Plays Phylath from exile and has to discard the 1 card in his hand again. Discards a Windfall this time and decides to put it in exile with the Conspiracy Theorist. Makes 8 plant tokens and still has the lands to crack here. Might be difficult for our opponent to fix his colours if he's gone for all basics. We haven't seen too many duels yet, just this Triskull land. Does crack the Misty Rainforest. Alright, does have the duels, so there we see a tiger. And triggers landfall again, so probably another insect, a card draw and plus counters on all the plant tokens. Not seeing any haste yet though. And even if we do, it's probably not going to be enough damage to try and get rid of this player, especially with the big lifelinker held in the way. Oh, this is 4 plus counters on 1 creature, as opposed to a plus counter on everything like the Avenger. Ignite the Future being cast, and that is exile the top 3 cards, and you can play them this turn. Discards, he's got the Phial of Galadriel in the bin now, so he's cracked that, giving back the Aura, which is noteworthy with this thing being in play. Discarded and Evolving Wilds by the looks of it. So now on top we see the Azusa, which he is 1 land away from casting. Cracks the Verdant Catacombs. See if he can draw into something of relevance. Piling the plus counters onto just 1 plant token, so trying to make that a decent blocker. Oh, he was able to afford the Azusa somehow. I'm obviously missing how much mana he's got available to him. Oh, I'm not accounting for the Doc Urlock. This counts exiled spells as well, not just cards in the graveyard. So just 1 mana for the Azusa. Triggers the Conspiracy Theorist after something else is discarded. That is a Rampaging Baloths. which will cost them 4 mana, thanks to the Urlock. So it's probably a good idea for our opponent to just make one land at a time here. Maybe he'll draw into one that comes in untapped, and that might be of some relevance. But should be able to make a decent chump blocker. Okay, that's risky. A Windfall being cast with 0 cards in hand, so he's going to draw to Flubs and discard this card straight away. Maybe he's just trying to get into more relevant lands here, but each player is going to draw 4. Risky because it gives this player some cards as well. So there's Sir Conrad the Grim, triggering 4 times. We see Yavimaya Elder and Anger is relevant for haste on everything. They do control a mountain. A bit of a pet card of mine, the Apex Predator, you don't see very much of. Izoni as well. Being placed into exile is the Tireless Provisioner, was the one card that they drew into. So now with 4 cards in hand, I don't know how many lands they've got left to make. Another 2 off the Azusa, I think. We see another basic. Puts Flubs on the bottom of the stack this time, and piling plus counters onto a different plant this time. This one over here is an 8/9. Flubs has 4 cards to choose from with regards to discard here. So it might be an idea to get down the Tireless Provisioner before you make any more landfall, if you are only going to have to spend 1 mana on it. Conspiracy Theorist triggering again when they discard this time a Valakut Exploration, more landfall. And they do play the Tireless Provisioner. Discards to Flubs a Lotus Cobra. I can't keep the graveyards open because Magic Online. But yeah, discarding a Lotus Cobra, which they probably, throw into exile. Being allowed to throw it into exile, it doesn't seem as though the Line Sash is being held up anymore for whatever reason. So plays another fetch land into the Tireless Provisioner. So they'll get a treasure token, we assume, more plus counters, another insect, card draw from Tatyova. They'll have to discard to Flubs because they've got a card in hand. Discards and exiles to the Flubs and Inspired Tinkering. Exile the top 3 cards, you can play them until the end of the next turn. Create 3 treasure tokens. So for a single mana, as you would assume, the Lotus Cobra comes into play. The Eruth is discarded and exiled to the Conspiracy Theorist. Cracks the Wooded Foothills. And again, dumps a bunch of triggers on the stack. This time has the Lotus Cobra for additional mana as well, so effectively makes 3 mana from this 1 land entering. Spreading the plus counters again. He has a couple of 8/9s, and we'll have a 4/5 as well. Noteworthy, he didn't put Tatyova on top of the stack, so he must have an idea of what he wants to do. He made green mana with the Lotus Cobra. Might have wanted to see what he draws into first before choosing what colour to make. Manages to cast with that the Inspired Tinkering, so exiles the top 3 and makes 3 treasure tokens, which allows him into a Conduit of Worlds. Jeska's Will as well might come in handy. He will only make 4 mana with that though. Not sure what exactly he's hunting for here. Plays the Jeska's Will, pointed at the Jund player who's less likely to cast anything in response. So now there's Ancient Green Warden, bunch of lands, and a Hugs Valakut Exploration. So I'm assuming that they've got another land to make. Or is it... yeah, this only cares about cards that are exiled with the Valakut Exploration. It doesn't care about any other exiled cards. So they've discarded and exiled again a Dryad of the Elysian Grove. That allows them into another land. And they do have a treasure left as well, so they can get that out for a single green and make another fetch. Do they have any fetchable targets is the question. Don't have too many jewels in play at the moment. So there we see the Dryad, no cards in hand, means they'll draw. 36 cards left in the library. Plays Scalding Tarn from exile and gets all the landfall triggers. Be interested to see if they have something like Thassa's Oracle or something in this deck. Valakut Exploration sees a Journey of Discovery, which... does it put them... yeah, this puts them into hand, so probably goes after the playing of additional lands with this, because the 3 mana investment is well worth it when you've got the Tireless Provisioner and the Cobra in play. Obviously they've got lands available to them to play here. So now they've got a couple of 4/5s and a couple of 8/9 plant tokens. A horde of insects as well. Cracks Scalding Tarn. There's a Cultivate exiled underneath the Valakut Exploration as well. And manages to bore the Jund player to death. Rampaging Baloth's into play now. So it looks as though the Danitha player after all might have been punished for focusing so much on us as opposed to Flubs. Flubs is famously a really powerful commander. Oh, there's been a token copy of this made, curiously. So the Springheart Nantuko has fallen off, and will continue to make insect tokens, but maybe he clicked wrong and put his commander in the command zone. But yeah, it looks as though Danitha might be punished yet. Was given more cards to that Windfall though. Deep Analysis being cast for 2 mana, and then they'll have access to the flashback as well. Discards and exiles Finale of Revelation. 2 cards in hand thanks to the Deep Analysis. I haven't seen him use the Journey of Discovery yet. Instead uses the last of his mana for Rapid Hybridization after all that onto the Danitha. So Danitha does go down. I mean, Lion's Sash is still a threat, but I don't think there's any tramplers that it can go on. Oh, this one has trample still, so yeah, only 20 life. He's probably got enough toughness to block it, in all fairness. But it looks as though this player might have disconnected as well, also bored to death. It wasn't, in real time, it wasn't too much longer that it looks as though this guy is passing over priority, passing the turn over to this player. Since this player scooped, it's been about a minute or two, so if he'd had just a tiny bit more patience, he's played it out until the last hurdle, really. Might have been that he could have drawn into a card and done something about this, but probably not. If you just play it out one more turn, then you can see if this guy's gonna solitaire again, which he probably is, and then scoop. But yeah, we've kind of been avenged there at least, so assuming that this player doesn't come back, I'll assume that that is the end of the game. So a big thank you to all of you for watching, and hopefully you all got some enjoyment from it. There was a commenter who asked me to build Eutropia, and I did say that if the comment gets a decent amount of support and likes and replies and stuff, then I will build it. And to my surprise, some of you actually did, so kind of been strong-armed into building this one, but hopefully you got some enjoyment from it. Like I said, big thank you to the supporters on Patreon as well. You can support yourself via the link in the description below. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.